Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode, oh God, 11, I hope. I think I got that right. No, it could be 12. I've forgotten. Never mind. So tonight I have a very special guest. I have TV genealogy royalty. He's been on DNA Journey, My Family Secrets Revealed, and you see him and with Mamondo as well. So without further ado, I welcome Brad Argent. Hello,
Hi.
Brad.
Hey, or perhaps more appropriately, g'day.
How are you?
I'm very well. The day has turned out rather lovely here in London. It was just a bit miserable this morning, but it really cleared up in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I celebrated by sitting on the lounge and playing the Xbox.
What better way? Anyway, so I figure we may as well get into it. So,
Yeah, please.
for those who mightn't necessarily know you, Brad, could you give a quick intro to you?
Yeah, so look, my name's Brad Argent, and I've worked for Ancestry now for just a bit over 14 years. I started the Australian operation back in 2007 with an ex-colleague of mine, Deborah Chesterton. And we built that business up. And yeah, for the last few years, and I've worked across pretty much everywhere in Ancestry, but for the last few years, I've been really focusing on, well, the phrase I was given was, can you go away and find out how to make some television? And so that's pretty much what I've been doing for probably the last 4, 5 years, actually, six years maybe.
Right. So doing it for a while then.
Yeah, doing it for a little while. Very much, I suppose, a noob in the TV world. There's lots of people out there with a lot more experience than me in that space, but love it. One of the things I've really enjoyed about my time at Ancestry so far is just the variety of work I've got to do. Go out and collect content, work in PR, roll out DNA across 36 different countries, and make television. And learning new things keeps you going, which is one of the reasons why I think people love genealogy, is because you never master it. It's not something you can become a master at, but it's something you can become good at, but you're always learning new things. I always discover every day a new record set, a new way of doing things, or perhaps more appropriately, I learned that I've been doing things the wrong way for a long time.
Right. Now, I can imagine you've been doing genealogy for quite a while. So what had started it all off?
Yeah, all right, this will age me a little bit, but my dad was doing family history, and he was using a DOS program to enter the family history, and he'd upgraded his computer to Windows, and so he wanted me to help him. And so my background is in technology, so he wanted me to help him migrate from DOS to Windows. And I said, okay, all right, I'll help you do that. And then I started looking at his tree. I went, oh, okay. And I looked at something and I went, that's interesting. And I looked a little bit harder. I went, well, that's not right. And then I looked at something else and went, well, I don't think that's right either. And it was weird. I was kind of hooked. I kind of got, and I'm not sure whether part of it was just, a desire to connect with my dad on something, or, help him grow his thing. But I have to say, I elbowed him out of the way, and I kind of just took over. And look, I'm a bit of a cheapskate, and so I never paid for anything. It's free. I love, and there's so much family history you can do for free. So I certainly maxed out my time at the local library using Ancestry, and this was back in the day, going through microfiche and microfilm and the old card catalogs. and doing it a little bit old school. Even to the point that I didn't have an Ancestry subscription until I started working for Ancestry, because there was so much you could do. There was so much you can, and still so much you can do for free. So that's kind of how I got into it. So I've been doing it now for 25 years, maybe.
And I love how you just kind of phrased it as, I've elbowed my dad out of the way when it comes to doing. Probably not the term I would have used, but sure, your word, not mine.
Well, I think that was actually what I did. He was sitting at his computer, and I just kind of went, "Hang on, let's just move out of the way." I got the elbow up and pushed him out.
And just for anyone watching, we are not encouraging elbowing family members out of the way when it comes to genealogy. No. Collaboration, not elbowing. Anyway, so what resources have you found most helpful?
Really, that's a really interesting question, mate. I think perhaps one of the most undervalued and underrated sources for family history are libraries. And that could be a local library, it could be a family history library, it could be a state or a national library. Because, so much is online, so much wonderful content is online. And, who doesn't love doing family history in their pajamas, right? But you walk into the library in your pajamas and they get a little upset. So, you can do so much at home, right? But for me, I love going to a library because it could be that really small circulation of a book that was published that gives you that one nugget of information you've been looking for ages about someone. Or, it could be a local history that you pick up. It could be, I had a story I've been trying to crack for 20 years and it didn't come, and I cracked it. And it didn't come from online, actually. It wasn't even in a library. I was at a family history fair and, I had the Ancestry table there. And I just happened to be having a conversation with the person next to me about this particular story that I was trying to crack. And he went, "Oh, that name sounds really familiar." Lunch break, he went home, came back and said, "Oh yeah, here," and just gives me this bit of paper. And it's just like, that bit of paper unlocked everything. That single bit of paper, that's never going to be online. That's going to be, the only place that was going to be was in this, first of all, in this guy's head. And secondly, in his drawer at home. Which kind of leads me to my other favorite source, is talking to people. And it's the one tip I give anybody who's thinking of starting family history is, find the oldest person in the family and talk to them. And do it today and record it. Because, you don't want to get distracted by taking notes. So just record it. Because those stories that they tell you, even if they're not all necessarily 100% accurate, they can be the starting point for unlocking a mystery. And if you don't get that nugget of information, you could be looking your whole life and never get anywhere. So, yeah, those are some of my favorite things. And of course, Ancestry is wonderful.
So, what projects or ventures are you currently pursuing?
Well, yeah, we've got some great stuff happening. Some TV going on in Australia, which is wonderful. We make a show. We help make a show in Australia called Every Family Has a Secret, which is just beautiful. I mean, it's beautifully made. It's beautifully shot. The stories are just researched so well, so lovely. And so that's currently in production with its third season. So I'm helping out a little bit on that where I can. Got a show in Germany we're trying to sort out, where I've got a couple of shows here in the UK. I'm just waiting to get the final nod from ITV on whether or not we do another season of DNA Journey. Fingers crossed. It's all looking really positive, but you need that green light. And And yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff happening in the US, which is really exciting. And there's also some stuff happening in the Nordics. So it's keeping me pretty busy. My level of involvement varies. But yeah, lots of really interesting projects, and making television, particularly the type of television that we make that often involves quite a bit of travel in the middle of a pandemic, is really interesting. It has its own special challenges.
I can imagine. Now, while we're on the TV section, so obviously, I think a lot of people watching, and if any of you have seen stuff that Brad has been in, do let me know. So obviously, you've been on My Family Secrets Revealed, alongside Tessa Dunlop and more historians, and uncovering, multiple stories and piecing together DNA, and kind of, I can only imagine, how much kind of work that there must be to go into, research that, make sure everything's fine to a T, and just kind of laying it out in front of them.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. When we did My Family Secrets Revealed with Channel 4, with the lovely Tessa Dunlop and the absolutely wonderful Onyeki Nubia, it was a lot of work. I think we researched 200 stories for that show. And now these were things people came to us for because they couldn't solve them themselves. So the bar was already high. But one of the things that Ancestry has at its disposal is, and actually one of the things I have at my disposal, is the wonderful team at Pro Genealogists, which is one of Ancestry's subsidiary companies that just does research. And so, it is a joy to have access to research like that, because they can crack things that I'd never get to. And so we put in, for that show, it would have been thousands of hours of work. Because you're trying to solve one single problem, the research is a lot more focused. When you're making a show like DNA Journey, for example, it's a little bit different. You're looking for a story. And so you're looking for, but you're also looking for a redemption arc, because that's how television works. You want to take someone on a journey, but you also want to redeem that character at the end. And so, we'd look for stories that we felt would resonate with the people that we were telling the stories for. And so you're trying to find a specific story, which is very different to how you'd normally do family history, because you sort of step back and you look for all your ancestors. Then you look to see if you can find things for them. Or we're trying to find a particular type of story. And so the research on there, sometimes, I have to say, sometimes the stories just fall into your lap. And I'm sure we've all had moments like that, where you just go looking for something and suddenly there it is. And other times, particularly if you're working with somebody like Alan Carr and Amanda Holden, who been on Who Do You Think You Are before, you've got to try and find new stories. That can be challenging, but I think we proved that it's absolutely doable. So yeah, lots and lots of research, but fun, not just got to build back through these through these sort of hatch, match, and dispatch records. You've got to look left and right and look at very different record sets, speak to local historians, who I have to say are just, again, a massively undervalued resource. Local historians, love them. So yeah, lots of research, but a lot of fun too. I had a ball. I love making telly, and I love telling the stories.
Fair enough. And I totally don't seem envious of the people on it, kind of thinking, oh, I'd really like to be that guy, although I probably won't. Anyway, so is there anything you now know that you wish you knew when you started?
I wish I'd been better at taking sources, recording the sources of the information. I'm not particularly academic about how I go about my research because I'm very story focused. So I'm a little relaxed when it comes to citing my sources. So I wish I'd been more regimented in doing that, and then it'd just be second nature. Now, when I do it, when I need to do it, particularly when you're making television, from a compliance point of view, you have to prove what it is you're saying. I find it harder and a little bit more challenging. So yeah, that. And again, I just wish I'd asked the questions. I managed to interview my grandmother, my mother's mother, before she died, and I still have it. I actually videoed it, and it's a lovely resource. But I didn't speak to my dad's mum before she died, and my grandfathers would. Well, one was dead before I was born, and the other one died when I was very young. But I wish I'd asked more questions. So just to give you some idea of the context of that, asking questions, I'd been doing family history for 10 years before my mother just randomly dropped into a conversation about, oh, yeah, well, and dropped this massive family history bombshell. And I'm not going to embarrass her by saying what it was, but it's like, I've been doing this thing for 10 years at this stage. I'm interested in this stuff. Why didn't you tell me? And she said, well, you never really asked. And she was absolutely right. I didn't ask her. I didn't sit down with my mother and ask her what she knew about the family. I just made an assumption that I could skip over her because I could talk to my gran, or I made an assumption, and I think maybe we all do this as family historians. We're only focused on dead people, so we don't really focus on the living. And maybe if I could go back and tell myself, I'd say, find those people and ask them the stories. Because a lot of the stories that I find now, those people were alive when those things happened. And I can't get that back.
Yeah, I guess it's just one of the sad truths. When they're gone, you can't, just kind of go like, right, come back here for 15 minutes and let me ask you about this.
Yeah.
I think we'd all be very happy if we could, because we'd absolutely want to go like, oh my God, tell me. And then we'd probably just go like, why on earth did you do that? And just absolutely lose it with them. So it would probably have its perks and also downfalls if we were able to do that. So I think you've kind of inadvertently answered this in your previous answers. What aspect of genealogy do you like the most? So, like finding old photos, seeing records, telling stories?
Yeah, it'd have to be the telling stories. I do enjoy the joy of discovery. Right? So when you find a record, or you make a connection, or you get a hunch about something and it's proven right, I do love that. But the reason I do those things is to tell the story. And so, yeah, for me, I'm very story focused.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, right, that's probably going to be his answer for that. So, say no more. What's an interesting story or event that you've discovered about your ancestors? I think you'll have something to say for this somehow.
Yeah. So, fascinating story. And I might mistell it a little bit. Some of the facts may be a little bit wrong, but the general intent of the story is there. So my 5 times great grandmother was a French. She was born to a French father in London, but she was caught stealing money. I think that, and it was like 10 shillings or something. So, it was a reasonable chunk of money in the time. So sent out to Australia. Now, her name was Susanna Lallemore. And she was sent out on this ship with a bunch of other female convicts. That ship got captured by pirates, and they all got dumped off on this, like, remote desert island. And then they had to send another ship to come and pick up those convicts and take them back to Australia. And on that ship was an armourer by the name of Aaron Walters. And he became quite smitten with Susanna. And so when he got to Australia, he jumped ship and set up family with her in a place called Windsor outside of Sydney, which I have to tell you is beautiful, absolutely beautiful part of Australia. And she developed something of a reputation for being a very energetic woman, and often was seen running around the streets screaming abuse of people in French. So it's quite the character. And so that the fact that my 4 times great grandmother was captured by pirates, it's like that stuff just happens in books, right? But no. And of course, it was that long ago. I'm one of many, many people who have a connection to that story. And the funny thing is, my dad, when he started doing family history, he was convinced that the Argents were convicts. And this whole time, my mother, very quiet, didn't say anything. When I dived into the family history, my mother's side of the family is riddled with convicts, whereas my father's side of the family are actually reasonably boring. So all of the big stories are coming from my mum's side. It's very imbalanced.
That's some image for a woman running around, doing abuse in French.
Well, yeah, in colonial Australia, it must have been an interesting sight to see.
Yeah. God, that just made me laugh now. So thank you for that. So, what type of record do you like the most, and why?
So, it depends. I think, from a research perspective, marriage records are always my preference, because everybody's alive. It's usually a happy occasion. You get, depending on where they are, you often get quite a lot of information on a marriage record, names of parents, what have you. So they're my favorite. Then probably birth records, and then death records. Now, my concern with the death records is that they're never filled out by the deceased. So the information that's in them is always secondhand, always. So you have to take it, you've got to always, I think you need a little bit more wiggle room when you're looking at a death record. Oh. But I like, outside of that sort of hatch, match, dispatch records, but build trees and build nodes on trees, I think my favorite would be anything that's narrative. So like a will or a book of letters, or there's a record set in Australia. It's a small record set, and they're the orphan application registers, and they're just registers of people writing in saying that can you send me some workers, who might be orphan workers. But then you also get letters in there of people looking for their siblings who were farmed out here and farmed out there. I mean, we're talking 19th century, and just a vast bulk of the research I do these days does not, it's not my family, but records like that, where you get a real sense of the human involved, it transports you back to a place in time and a person in time in a way that a census record can't, or even a marriage record can't. So I like that sort of personal narrative stuff. You learn about the person, and I find that fascinating. That and photos. Photos to me they're almost a form of sorcery. It's a slice of it is a slice of history, a moment frozen in time, and I love photographs with people in them. It doesn't matter who it is, old photographs and people, and you look at that photo and you go, okay, well, that photo was probably the early part of the 20th century, late 19th century. Everybody in that photo is dead. And yet I can look at them and I can see them and I have sort of some proof of who they are. And so that, and then the joy of being able to identify who those people are, that, I love doing that. And for that reason, I'm often out buying random pictures of people with little bits of information on the back, just to be able to say, oh, this photo is of this person, and learn a little bit more about that person. Yeah. I obviously have way too much time on my hands.
Which is every bad thing. Oh dear. And when you were kind of, talking about, death records,
mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that you always have to keep in mind. It is secondhand information, because obviously it's not going to be filled out by the person themselves. I think it'd be rather concerning if they did. I think I remember seeing a article on Twitter. It was either I want to say it was Dave Annell, but I can't remember who. Had shared an article that they found, and it was saying, man says body is not his. And a man who was supposedly dead was asked to come in and see if this was his own body. And I mean, if he's sounding right, and I think, there's one line in the article, so-and-so was asked to come to the mortuary or the morgue or something to identify if this body was his. And it was a quote, and it kind of said, no, that's not me. And I mean,
it would have been far more alarming if it actually was him.
Yeah. And you're just talking to the ghost of the one just gone. I just cracked up when I saw that. I'll try and find it again. Anyway, so what does genealogy mean to you?
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's a very simple question on the surface, isn't it? But I think it's actually quite a big question, really. Well, look, it means a lot of things to me. I like the ability that it gives me to be able to find a connection to history. And I think it gives me some sense of being part of something bigger, being a link in a chain, It gives me access to where I'm from, which I kind of don't know whether that's, obviously because I'm Australian and it is essentially a country of immigrants that we all sort of look for some sense of connection to something bigger or deeper, or whether it's just a part of the human condition to want to belong to something. But I do think it gives me the ability to do that. And one of the things I love about it is that I can curate that. So I have Irish ancestry. I've got ancestry that takes me back to Cork, and I really like that. I'm very proud of that. But for some reason that seems to be more prominent in for me than does my connection to Cambridgeshire. So yeah, I like that about it. But I think for me, I think what genealogy has become, particularly in the 21st century, is it's a gateway drug to history. So what is it? What it does, and I actually think it will be the salvation of history, because people like yourself getting involved in genealogy, what you're really doing is you're actually finding a personal connection to history. And I think if we can do that, if we can all do that, we'll actually get a sense of the appreciation of the value of history. One of the things, my experience is when I look at my ancestors and I go through the process of genealogy, and I see that they stumbled they fell, they got back up, they got on with it. Sometimes they succeeded, a lot of times they failed. But ultimately they succeeded, otherwise I wouldn't be here. It kind of makes me feel a little bit better about who I am, and it makes me, I think, a little bit more open to take some risk, because a lot of our ancestors did. I mean, mine certainly did. Otherwise, I wouldn't be Australian.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, as far as anyone can trace my family back, and I dare you to try otherwise, you will find nothing but Irish as far as you go up. If you found anything else, I'd be amazed, because no matter how far I go up, on my father's side, it's all Irish farmers. I don't think there was anyone that was anything different on that side. And my mother's side of the family seemed to be full of rebels during the 1916 Rising and surrounding times, be it during the War of Independence. So you go from farmers, yes, in my head, to rebels. So.
Well, yeah, but part of that's the joy, isn't it? Like, people often say my family's really boring. I've done my family history and it's really dull, or, they're all, farmers from Yorkshire for 400 years. And I kind of go, maybe you're not looking hard enough. A lot of the more interesting stories on my family haven't come from my direct ancestors. I've had to take a step to the left or a step to the right and look at great uncles or great aunts or more distant cousins. But to find those stories, and sure, they might be a little bit more removed from me, but yeah, do I own them? Absolutely. Absolutely I do. Even the slightest connection, I want that story, and I'll absorb it into the larger Borg of the stories of me. And so I think, man, having, if I was in your shoes and I was able to say, okay, well, look, I've got all these rebels on one side, but I've also got this sort of like continuous connection with this piece of land. As somebody who comes from a country that's relatively young, getting that sense of belonging to a continuous occupation of a piece of country, I can't imagine what that's like to walk in those places. I get a little bit of a sense of it when I go to somewhere, say here, where my ancestors may have been for hundreds of years. I do get a sense of that, get a sense of that sort of connection with something. But to know there's a continuous chain that puts you in touch with this particular place, that's got to be special.
Yeah, and I mean, for like one, on my mother's side particularly, there's this one guy who keeps recurring in the newspapers, and my father's side seems allergic to being written about in the newspapers, which is infuriating. But anyway, there's this one guy on my mother's side, the one who keeps showing up in the newspapers. And there was this one bit where he was in prison twice. The first time for possibly about 2 weeks, and that was coming back from a GAA conference in Dublin back down to his hometown of Dungarvan in Waterford, to be arrested and then put in Waterford prison for supposedly like breaching the peace or something, like just kind of causing a bit of an uproar. I dread to think what he did, but I will eventually find that out. And the second time he was in prison in Ballykinlar prison, which is in County Down, which is the north of the country, for I think about 2 years, for an ordeal, and this is what keeps reoccurring in the newspapers. I can never find the prison register or find out what on earth happened to him. But he was imprisoned for, quote unquote, an ordeal from which he never recovered. Now, what that ordeal from which he never recovered was, I do not know. I haven't the slightest clue as to what.
I'd be itching to find out, right?
Yeah, so would I. I mean, this is 1924 or 5, so he would have been 1920. Probably would have been about 72 or 73. So I don't know what they're doing imprisoning a 72 or 73-year-old in for 2 years in a prison for. And he died in 1929 at the age of 77. So, I mean, I don't know what they would do or what they honestly thought like a 72-year-old man would be doing at his age. I have no clue. But I may find out, I may not. I mean, I've looked on the local museum's website, Waterford County Museum, and there isn't anything obvious that I can find out from it. And, you know, I find it really nice. You know, one thing I like about family history is, you know, finding, the kids who never made it. Because in a sense, you know, with the stigma of, you know, if it was a stillborn or a child who didn't, you know, who probably died maybe a week or two or a year old, and like everyone was kind of told, you know, don't talk about it, kind of thing. And when you're kind of essentially, you know, giving them a name, you're finding them again, you're adding them in, you're kind of, you know, bringing them back into the family, because they may kind of, you know, oh, well, this person died, I'm not going to talk about that. And this surprised me because I never could find her in the census. But the one who I just was talking about, he was my 2 times great-grandfather. His wife, I could not find in the 1911 census. Now, the 1911 census for him, my 2 times great-grandfather, is not digitized. So I have to go and look at the actual microfilm itself whenever I can go places. I can't wait for that to happen. She turned out to be in a mental asylum in 1911. For hereditary mania. So what I think it is, and from what it's kind of pointing to, she had it for 13 years, and her last child was born in 1896. That was my great-grandmother. It's possibly, you know, like, I'm going to get the terminology wrong, but it's like, it's not
you think it's like a postpartum depression or something like that?
Thank you. That's the one I was trying to think.
Yeah. Oh, look, it could have been, because it was, you know, I mean, obviously it wasn't really diagnosed back then.
Yeah.
I always find it challenging, health records in particular, because, you know, I mean, they always say the dead don't have any privacy, but I always do find myself feeling a little, I don't know, I'm saying uncomfortable because I'm not sure that's the right word, but just a little uneasy.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at records about somebody's health. I think it's slightly different if you're looking at things like a cause of death or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're looking at something that, you know, where somebody had an affliction that, you know, caused them to suffer for a prolonged period of time, and, you know, of course, you know, by our standards, the treatments weren't great. I mean, it's like from a you know, family historian's perspective, it's great because it can often put a lot of things into context. But it's also intensely personal, and there's all, you know, for me, there's a sort of I have a tendency to approach the records with a certain sort of reverence that I might not give to, more mundane material.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating when you get access to material like that, because sometimes it does answer a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah. And sorry, I went off on a tangent there. But anyway, I found her in the census, and then I wish they did it in the 1901 as well, because it would have answered another few questions. How many kids did they have? How many are still around? Because it would have been really handy. And also if we weren't missing like 70 years worth of census records in Ireland too. But I mean, I can't control that. But it had said, I think no, I had found another possible sibling of my great grandmother, and mum. I was working with my mum on the family tree. It was something we tend to do, and we were just having a look because she was one of two that we knew, and we kind of thought, well, the families tended to have a few more. It was just how it was, and we were kind of thinking, right, this just seems weird. We cannot find another child, and it's just these two. But we decided, right, we'll have another look, and lo and behold, we find an Edmund Whelan, and there I had asked a cousin of mine who is who kind of did a little bit of digging, not as much as I've done, but kind of had actually looked into this, and he kind of said, "Who's Edmund?" Because he'd never heard of it, or he'd never heard of it. And when I looked at that 1911 census, that just kind of was the straw that kind of, confirmed it. It was her. So it has kind of said number of years married, 19. Number of children born alive, 3. Number of children born still living, 2.
Yeah.
So that Edmund, and I know it's him because I know about the other brother that she had called Morris, who never married, never had kids, and he died in 1951 at the age of 57, 8 or so. So I cannot find a death cert for him either. I cannot find a death cert for Edmund. So in my tree, he is literally his birthday, location of birth, and then before 1911 in the death field, because I cannot find the death cert for him. His name's Edmund, so I tried Edmund, Edward, Ed, and just anything really. So that, and yeah, I mean the fact that that was kind of the fact I kind of brought him back into the family picture in a way.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't find him, like I doubt many others would have known about him.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to do that, to keep or to mark them and to remember them. So, at least they live in history a little bit. And that's one of the great things about doing family history is you do kind of leave a legacy, and that legacy is that collections of names, that collection of history, and and so I kind of absolutely get it, that need for, and that desire to want it to be complete and want it to be accurate. And I mean, the 1911 census is fantastic. I'm very excited for the 1921, which is coming in the UK, which is coming next year, which will be very exciting, because I don't think there is, from memory, I don't think there is a 31. So I think, and then...
No, I think it was, anyone that does UK research might be able to correct us on it, but I think it was in the 1940s sometimes. I don't...
There was the 39 register, but like... I've got all these things I'm waiting for the 1921 census to do. I just need that. I just need that thing from the 21 census, and then I can move on. And so waiting. I'm very much looking forward to it, because as the thing about a census, of course, it's one night out of every 10 years, but what a night, It has so much information in it.
No, I know, because now my um any kind of connections I had to England probably started probably 40s or 50s. So like it wouldn't be caught in the upcoming UK census. For Ireland, when the 1926 census is released, or whenever I hear word of it being released, it's just go research, go find, because like I mean it's just I need that one so badly, because obviously it's Genie, I'll just talk there,
Yeah.
because that's 15 years, because we were meant to have a 1921, but I think the reason was, and I'm probably going to be corrected on this as well, so disclaimer, I might be wrong when I say this, but I think the reason why they didn't do it was because an alien invading at the time, alien at that time being Britain, because this is during the War of Independence, so they didn't do it. So I'm very mad at the person who made that decision. So the 1926 is going to be the next best thing. So whenever 2026 or 2027, whenever it's being released, oh, it'll be joyous.
Yeah, won't it? Won't it? Oh, it's, you kind of get this sort of, sometimes you can get a little bit of fatigued, and particularly if you do family history every day for, a couple of hours a day, you can kind of think you know everything and you've seen everything. And then like a new record set will just pop up, or, someone will release something, or something becomes publicly available or something. And sometimes, like the big census records, you know when they're coming and you know when they're going to hit. Other ones you can just be, if you're like me, doing a mundane, search again with exactly the same criteria, just hoping that it brings up something different. And occasionally it does. And then you go, what's this? I haven't seen this before. Do love me a new record set. I have to admit that I do search for my ancestors pretty much in everything that comes up, because you just never know. You never know where they were, when they were there. And I've found them in my ancestors in record sets that I thought they had no right in being in at all. And yep, there they were. So, yeah, I think you have to look at everything.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're feeling like you're running out of options,
Yeah,
they could well be in the Canadian, who knows? They could be in the Canadian passenger records. If you don't look, you don't know.
Yeah. Right. So I'm getting to the end of my questions, but I've done this a little different. So I asked, I think it was possibly Friday, for those of you watching and anyone on Twitter to send in questions that you wanted to ask Brad, which he will answer as best as possible. That's a disclaimer we're throwing in now. So if you have any ones that you didn't tweet to me on Twitter, and I will see them. Well, not now anyway. So if there was one thing that you wanted to ask, put it in the comments below, and I will address it. I'll be able to bring that one up, but I'll just screen share a presentation full of questions. And also with the questions that I have, there was no particular order that I stuck these in. It was just however, they came up. So I didn't, kind of think, right, I'm going to go for that one first and do the rest then. So again, get any questions that you'd like in now. And if you already had, don't worry, they'll be coming now. So my last two are, well, the first one is, what advice would you give to a young person starting out in genealogy?
Resilience. You need resilience, because as and this is going to sound a little harsh, but you're entering a category, like a hobby. And for some people, it's a business that is the domain of people who are more mature, and basically old people like me. And you're going to need a little bit of patience, because you guys, I mean, the young people have this ability to adapt to technology very, very quickly, and your minds can work a little bit faster sometimes than ours, and you can run and you run off on tangents a little differently, and so you might find it tough. You might find that if you should, by all means, join a family history society. This is the one thing that you should absolutely do. It's where I learn 90% of what I know about family history, is by sitting in a family history society and pestering people. And so you need to do that, but you got to realize that you might not actually initially meet with acceptance when you're in there, but be resilient. Get in there. That's where the gold is. That's where you're going to learn how to do some things. And that's where you're going to, I think, unlock the biggest joy in family history, is a discovery that you can share. And there's no greater joy in this game than sitting in a room full of people and, literally jumping up and shouting for joy because you've found this person that you've been looking for ages. And everybody in the room gets to benefit from that. And there's a real sense of community from it. So that's what I would suggest. Connect to those places because they're so important and you'll learn so much. But you've got to learn a little bit of resilience and just keep going back, keep asking the questions.
Right. Yeah. And I think, especially for young people who I'm not, and again, when I say this, I'm not saying this has happened to me, but kind of some people might be met with a frosty reception and then kind of think, oh, that didn't go down well, did it? Young person getting a genealogy, or something like that. But
yeah, Daniel, you and young people like yourself are the future of history. So, people like me, older people like me, really need to be supporting you and embracing you and giving you every chance that we can, because you're the future of our hobby, of our category, and you're the future of history. So, yeah, like to young people out there, thank you, because you're saving family history.
All right. And on that point, my last question before I address the 25, I think I got in the end, questions on Twitter. With times changing and more young people getting into genealogy, do you think there is like a sufficient outlet for young people to, interact with their own age and, just to connect and collaborate with others?
I think genealogists are a pretty inventive lot. They can find, if the record exists, they'll find a way to the record, right? Even if it's not online, they'll find a way, because that's part of what you learn to do. And I kind of think with younger people, there might not be the platform out there, but you make your own spaces, and you guys can do that certainly with technology in ways that some of us can't. So does a perfect solution exist? No, but to me, from what I've been seeing, looking in from the outside, that doesn't seem to bother you. You guys seem to find a way to make it work and to connect, and which is wonderful to see.
Right. And with those questions out of the way, it's time for more. So you'll have your work cut out for you now, Brad.
Okay.
So now I just got to hope that this works, because this is the first time I've ever done something like this. Please. So first question here. Oh, never mind, it's not showing up. Now we are. So, could Ancestry please revert back to the old hit system?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, well, the short answer is no, but I totally understand where you're coming from, because I have to admit, struggled with the new hints system. Took me a while, but I kind of, I've got used to it. Do I find it better? Yeah, you know what? I probably do. Okay, I might be a little bit biased in that, and I accept that. But Ancestry's made a bunch of changes over time, Daniel, and I used to use I used old search until until they actually turned it off. So because I don't like change, so it's I know where you're coming from. I know it might the transition might be painful, but a lot of thought goes into these things. They're not just random things that we do. And the guys who build our products are, trust me, massive family history nerds. And so they are building products based on not just their own personal experience, but years and years of experience from people from all around the world who use our products. So there is method in it, but change can be hard to come to terms with, and I know that, and I have shared your pain with the new hint system, but it is worth it.
Right. And just so you know, I didn't come up with these. Anyone watching, these are all ones that you've been sending in on Twitter. So you will probably see your question up here. And if you don't, I apologize. So the next one is, are there any plans to allow you to search Ancestry DNA matches trees by ancestors' first names? I personally have, and I apologize if I butcher these pronunciations, Aspasias, Shadrachs, Meshax, and the odd Abednego. I'm sorry to whoever sent that one in, and help others with similar names of interest. Thanks.
Look, I don't know if there's any plans to do that. And I have to say, one of the great things about having this chat with you, Daniel, is and you asking that sort of question on Twitter, is we did get a whole bunch of these sort of product type questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take these and pass them over to the product team. And if nothing else, they will go into that list of things that they look at when they're looking at, okay, as part of our research work, what is it that people want? And so, yeah, I have to say, every time I looked at one of these questions, almost without exception, I went, yeah, I'd like that. Yeah, I'd like that one too. And I'd like that one. And I'd like that one. So it was very hard to say to this sort of stuff, oh, no, it's irrelevant, because I can absolutely see where you're coming from. So, yeah, a lot of these things I'm going to have to answer in a very similar way.
Yeah. So next one is, hi, Daniel Genealogy, Brad, Argent, and Ancestry. Are there any plans to introduce genetic communities to the continent of Africa? Yes, I know there are African genetic communities, but they're all diasporic communities based in America or the Caribbean, not actually in Africa.
And so I don't know. Again, I don't work in the product team, but I can tell you generally, when we look at communities, in order to create the communities, we need a corpus of data. And obviously that data comes from where we sell kits and where we have, obviously, trees. So in order for us to get good genetic communities in the continent of Africa, we'd have to be selling kits there and hopefully having some trees built there. And I'd like to think that that's something that we would do if ever the opportunity came up. But I don't believe there's any immediate plans for that.
Right, okay. On to the next one. Okay, would Ancestry consider adding additional filtering options to genetic matches, such as filtering by ethnicity? This would help enormously those of us who are mixed and trying to find matches in certain groups among the many thousands of white American matches.
Yeah, it would be helpful, wouldn't it? Because I was doing, actually, very recently, was doing some research where I had to go and look at the ethnicities of everyone and then work out which matches I needed to drill into. But if I was able to filter by that, it would have made it so much easier. But I don't know the answer to that, but it's a great question.
Right, and on ICL. Okay, I'd like to know what Ancestry thinks their biggest concerns or opportunities are to give context to why they make prioritization decisions. High level, do they want to focus on new users more than experienced DNA more than paper? Oh, sorry, I didn't read that right.
Yeah. Look, I'd say, yeah, I'm sure our competitors would like to know the answer to that question as well. Look, our focus has always sort of been on genealogy, and we're very much focused still on genealogy and giving people the ability to be able to build and grow their family trees. And we've got for those of you who've been paying attention, we now have a new CEO, Deb Lau, and she has a lot of product experience. And our focus has been I just think fine-tuned into getting that product to work. So that's the whole experience. Now, we want to make it easy for people. We want to make it easy for them to find what they're looking for. We want to make it easy for them to build trees. But at the same time, we want to make sure that our members are getting what it is that they're after. And so we have to balance that. That's finely tuned. Because I remember back in the days when you went to Ancestry, it was just a search page. And now you've got to log in, you've got to get it's there on your homepage, but it's a little bit different. And the market's shifted, so it's not surprising that it's different. I think DNA is here to stay. I don't think any of us can really deny that. I mean, it's been such a boon to family history, and anecdotally, it appears to be the starting point for family history these days. But you just look at the size of Ancestry. The data, the big corpus of data we've got is records. And, records, I think, will always be there because records lead to story. And whether you start out doing family history to tell stories or whether you start out doing family history just to build a tree, ultimately, I think you end up at a story. And stories mostly come from paper. So I know I haven't really answered that question in any detail, but I don't really have a lot of detail to give.
Yeah. And just to reiterate for anyone that might have joined in, Brad is answering to the best that he can, and apologizing in advance if you don't get the answer you might be looking for. But stay tuned, as there might be something that you didn't know. All I can hope. Right, so the next one is, are they continuously investing in behind-the-scenes performance and reliability? There have been rough spots in the past that we don't want to repeat.
Well, yeah, the short answer is yes. It is an online business, and so it's got to be online, right? And you want to access it when you want to access it. And the availability of the site generally is very, very good, except for the moment when you want to use it and it's not available, and then it becomes terrible. But if you look at it overall, it's actually very available and very stable platform. But of course, we're continuing to invest in that. I mean, we had a big shift in technology and a big investment in technology probably in the last 18 months, 2 years, that's made things so much more robust. And have there been issues along the way? Of course, but we're getting much better at addressing those. And it's a complex technical environment, but we employ really good people and we have really good services. So, yeah, we are continuing to invest in that, and as we should be, because that is the service that you pay for. Is I want family history and I want it now.
Fair enough. So the next one is, Ancestry recently disabled API access for DNA tools, and as a result, their users lost research capabilities. Will Ancestry replace these tools or otherwise work with partners to their mutual customers' benefit? I know a scalable way.
Yeah, again, I can't answer that. I can't answer that question. I know that they have done those things, but I don't have enough detail to answer as to why they were done, or if they choose to undo it. But yeah, look, again, great question. And the reason that we're putting these questions up, even if I can't answer them, is because I want to acknowledge the fact that those of you who have submitted them have really thought about it, and you've obviously used the product extensively. And I think your feedback is really important. So that's kind of why Daniel's presenting a whole bunch of questions that I can't answer, because I think he should, because I think your questions have a right to at least be aired.
And that is what I try and do as best as I can when I can. So, next one is, would love an indicator on records I've already viewed or ignored so I don't waste time viewing them again. I would also love to see mutual matches or distant matches. I think currently you can't see mutuals beyond fourth or fifth cousin. It would help us a lot on certain branches.
Yeah, again, great feedback. Thank you. I too would love an indicator on records that I've already viewed. So again, great feedback. Yeah, look, I mean, it's not really a question. Are we going to do any of those things? I don't know, because I don't work in product, but it's a great question, and we'll add it to the list.
Right, yeah, we're getting through these fairly good. I don't know what one we're on. I haven't been counting them. So we'll just have to keep going until we're at the end of slideshow. So next one. It would help if we could search trees with a location option. Often I can remember where an ancestor lived and not their names.
Oh yeah, wouldn't it? Like, it's one of the I used to use Family Tree Maker, and I'd build all my trees on Family Tree Maker and then just sync it to Ancestry, because I could search by location, and I really miss that function. And I would like to be able to search trees, bulk trees by name, because if I have over 300 trees in my account, and so I'd like to be able to go, when someone sends me a message and says, "Oh, I'm interested in this person," I have no idea who they're referring to, and I can't look through 300 trees to find that person. So I do think there's a lot of functions and features that I would love to see, but I think there are some technical issues. I left IT a long time ago, but I'm imagining that there are some sort of limitations with doing stuff through a browser. But again, it's a great question. It's a great request, and I'll certainly put it in front of the guys.
And I think you'll have a lot that you might be presenting the number.
That's fine.
Somehow. Right, on to the next one. I'd like to be able to filter hints, say, for example, to filter out non-direct ancestors or spouses of ancestors, which I think might help if you have a humongous tree, I might add.
Yeah. I think the... again, this comes back to trees. I think anything that can help you, manage or navigate a tree or hints is definitely worth looking at. I use hints, but I don't use them exclusively. Not every, there's 30,000 plus databases on Ancestry. A tiny fraction of those end up as hints. So you've got to look outside of hints. But yeah, I get you. It would be again, it's another thing to add to the list of things that we could do with trees. So yeah, thank you for that input.
So next one is, it would really help if Ancestry were to accept DNA tests from other companies. We have older tests from people who have passed away that I can't import into Ancestry, where the best matches are for the UK.
Yeah, it's something we've taken a fairly firm stance on, and we don't do that. What Ancestry is incredibly focused on issues of privacy and security. It's one of the tenets of that we put around our business. And We don't accept uploads because what we can't be sure of when somebody's uploading something is consent. And so I don't see that changing. I can absolutely understand why you would want to do that, particularly in this instance. And yeah, I've been in instances where I would love to be able to do that, but Ancestry's made it pretty clear that that's just something that we aren't doing. But yeah, no, I understand your frustration.
That's perfect. Right. So on to the next one. Please, can we have third-party DNA tools back, or are Ancestry developing their own?
Yeah, this goes back to the to that earlier question. Yeah, the short answer is I don't know, and but it is. I have to admit, it is one of the most common questions that I get asked is about that. So there's clearly a need or a perceived need for that. The Ancestry DNA product can do a lot of things. But some of those things are perhaps not as easy to find as others. So, you know, spend a little time. And I know that most of you are probably are very, very familiar with the product. But for those of you who aren't, spend some time with the product. Look at its features. Dive onto YouTube and see what's capable. You know, there's a lot of things you can do within the product that might serve some of the needs that you're looking for with the third-party tools. But some of the third-party tools are awesome, and I certainly use them. So I can understand what you want. But then again, you know, having third-party tools is great. I mean, you know, it's great that there's those options out there. So yeah, I know what you're saying, but I can't. I don't. The answer is I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, it like I'd say for me, I'm working on the records. I haven't done a DNA test, so these bits might necessarily be for me, but I'm just relating. So I was like, so don't shoot the messenger. But I'm just merely forwarding on inadvertently what others are asking. So on to the next one. I'd love to know when tree tags going to become visible on the tree view so that we can remove all the pictures of DNA matches.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about that to even comment. So, but again, thank you for putting it in there. I'll add it to the list. And if I get any meaningful feedback to that list, I will relate it through to Daniel, and then Daniel can circulate it.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So follow me on Twitter, because the only probably best way you're ever going to hear from me, because I, no offense, despise Instagram. Sorry. Right, on to away from my rants. Would Ancestry be able to indicate? Oh, we kind of already looked at this one. So
yeah, Mike, and I tell you, I love that feature on FMP. So yeah, it would be awesome if we could do that. Yeah. So if the product guys, if you're watching, can you make this one happen?
Well, I think we have a clear winner for what we'd want after this. So anyway, we used to be able to filter our DNA matches by genetic community a while ago now. Is that a feature that might come back?
Yeah, again, I don't know, but it's good to know that that's something that you guys found useful, and I don't really understand why it was taken away.
Okay, on to the next one. We're getting through these nice and quickly. So the ability to sort search results, particularly by date.
Yeah. No, when I saw that, I've got vague. It's either a memory or a dream that was once doable. Yeah, and I look, it might be Ancestry, it might have been somewhere else, but I'm sure I remembered sorting stuff by date at some point somewhere. Like you can kind of do that by using the filtering options in search. I mean, the search is very, very powerful. So you can filter by date, but you just have to be. What you can't do is obviously search within a wide range of dates and then sort them by date. But you can filter your search results by date, so you're actually narrowing it down. And if there's enough data, you can actually sort them by day. But yeah, being able to, I understand why you might want to do that, because I'm sure I've used it before somewhere else and it was actually pretty handy. But again, thank you. That's a good shout.
And obviously, don't forget, anyone watching, these are all going to be feedback taken. So if you want to get anything that I didn't catch on Twitter, please do make yourself known, because you mightn't get another opportunity for a while. So next one, rightio. The need for much better information on the original source of the records, especially in the no image text only collection.
Okay, so there is a data. Every piece of content on Ancestry has a database definition, and it's usually in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and it will give you information about where the records came from, so the original source of the data, and often the kinds of records, the kind of detail you're likely to find in it. Now, sometimes that information is very detailed, and it can often point you over to an archive for additional information. But sometimes, although rarely, there is very limited information, because there may not be a great deal of information to put there anyway. It may have been an index that somebody assembled themselves, and so the source data might be blank or might not exist at all. So, again, those things do exist because I've seen them, but the vast bulk of them, there should be, in the database definition on the lower left-hand side of the screen, there should be, when you're searching, there should be more information about it. And you should be able to, particularly if there's an image, but I know that this is about no image ones, but you should be able to find out where it came from. And, if you're doing proper family history, that's what you want. You want to be able to cite your sources, primary sources, ideally.
Absolutely. Right, on to the next one. To have DNA matches from other companies so that there's one large database. I know, obviously, you touched on this regarding the other DNA questions that came up beforehand.
Yeah, I know, and I can see where the advantage would be to that, but I can't see that. I can't see that happening.
Yeah. So, does Ancestry get paid for allowing this reality shows in doing celebrity research to find their DNA cousins, etc.?
No, we do not. So this is one I can kind of answer in a little bit more detail. And so we don't get paid. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite of that. So without going into a whole bunch of detail that's kind of irrelevant, with the show My Family Secrets Revealed, Ancestry co-funded that with Channel 4. So, we both got together and made that show, and we both paid to make that show. But shows like DNA Journey, for example, no, we just provide time and resources to help them make the show. Now, that's the making of the show. Then, of course, there's the sponsorship around the show, and that's a separate conversation with the network, that we might pay the network to sponsor a show and to buy advertising on the show. But I don't worry. I don't get involved in that. I just get in the making of, and I've never been paid to make television, sadly. But I do get paid by, I'm employed by Ancestry, and that's just part of my job. So no, but a lot of people do. A lot of people, pretty much everybody else you see on camera, is getting paid for their time and expertise, which is absolutely understandable.
Yeah. So, I wish you could narrow down by place more efficiently. Find my past, I can search within a number of miles. Also, when I choose to focus on England, start to type in place name and it still brings top options US and elsewhere.
Yeah, I had that problem a while ago, like years ago, but it seems to have gotten a lot better. So I haven't had that experience. So, but I guess, yeah, you're still having it. What we call our place name authority, which is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the whole list of places. Because we have 20 billion records from, all over the world, trying to have a standard way of referring to places, particularly places that change over time, it's quite an unwieldy beast. And it's always been one of those things that we're always chipping away at and always working on and getting it a little bit better. I can't recall who sent in this question, but if you're out there and you're watching this, or if you're actually listening now, drop me a tweet, and we'll speak, because I'm interested to see if I can replicate this, because I can't. I used to have that problem and I don't have it anymore. So I'd like to know if it still is a problem. The whole searching within miles stuff is great, and I use it on FMP definitely, but we don't have that, and I don't think there's any. I'm not aware of any desire to put it in, but yeah, if it's you that sent that tweet, yeah, please reach out to me. I will try and go through my tweets to see if I can find you, but otherwise, yeah, ping me, and
I'll mention you if I can find it again.
All right, lovely.
So next one after that is archives in Europe and family search are using artificial intelligence to automatically transcribe and index. Now, I think this is the last one. Automatically transcribe and index archival records. Does Ancestry have any plans in that direction?
Look, we are always doing research and development work, always. And you'd actually be surprised how much of that sort of stuff we do. We are, we lodge a lot of patents on stuff that we make and do, both across obviously the genetic side of the business and the record side of the business. And yeah, handwriting recognition is, everybody who is in the family history industry knows that's a massive unlock. And so we're all diving in and trying to get that to work. Now, as I'm sure you can understand, it's incredibly complex, but the technology has moved so far, so quickly, that we're actually getting to the point where this thing can be a reality. And of course, the accuracy levels are getting very, very close to human transcription. So massively exciting. Getting context worked out is, I think, a little bit harder and requires a bit more AI work. But the handwriting recognition stuff is just, it's very exciting. And yeah, are we part of that? Yes. Yes, we're, we look at anything, any possibility of trying to make the experience richer and deeper for people.
Fair enough. So I think that's the end. Yes, it is for Ray. So I can now stop sharing this, because this is driving me mad, having to switch between things and then bring it back to the... I'll eventually get back to this, but I mean, that was the first time I've ever screen shared on this thing, so that went well. Now, I've one question of my own, and and obviously I asked you this before we actually came on. With Find the Grave, people have been asking and calling on Ancestry for a waiting period, which essentially people would like, especially if they are family of the person and they're mourning, and it could be the week or the day even after, or just within a certain amount of time that person has already gone up and Find a Grave, and it's done before they can even do it themselves. And then you'll have the people who might necessarily want to transfer it, and then the person is just left, right, my family member's memorial is in someone else's hands. And some people are kind of thinking, well, if you have to do something to prove that you're family to this person or something, I don't know the ins and outs. I'm trying to recall any of it that I can remember off a Twitter thread, but kind of could something be done?
Well, look, I'm sure something could be done. The question is, what I've got sort of back to this is, okay, well, what's the issue? And I think the issue is really about people about paying a certain level of respect to what it is that you're doing. Now, as you said, you and I were chatting through this before we came on, and both of us admitted to spending way too much time in graveyards, and I kind of think you need to. If I see a fresh, I always sort of steer clear of a fresh grave because it's not. I think you need to give it space, and so I kind of feel like we should be self-regulating, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if a grave looks reasonably recent, if it's got obvious signs of that it's being attended by mourners, whether it has flowers on it or whether people have, come and put some stones on it or something like that, just to mark that they were there. Maybe just give it a bit of space. There's most cemeteries are pretty full, so there's other places to look at. I love things like Find a Grave and Billion Graves, and there's another one in Australia called the Australian Cemetery Index that are user-generated content, because to me that's part of the core of what family history is. It's people sharing stuff, and so I don't know that we want to necessarily put limits on what people could share, but rather I think it might be better to educate people about stuff and not say, don't put an arbitrary, it's got to be, older than 5 years or, older than 12 months or whatever. But just say to people, when you're going and you're doing this kind of thing, have these considerations in mind. Just like we say to people, when you find out a really juicy family secret, don't run out and share it with the family with the same kind of energy that you've got, because not everybody's going to react that way. So I think more considered approach to, making that information available, because you don't want to stop people from contributing to these kinds of things, because they are the lifeblood of things like Find a Grave and Billion Graves, etc. So, yeah, I think we could always do more to educate people, particularly people coming into the category, about, what we think is best practice. So that would be my response. Daniel, I don't know the ins and outs of Find a Grave and what they're doing. I use it, and I use, I don't know if you use it, mate, but I use the little sort of radar app whenever I'm out and about, and see if there's a cemetery, and then I see if somebody's looking for a photograph, because it gives me a reason to go and spend 40 minutes in a cemetery looking for a headstone for somebody else to take a picture of it. I love that, and I love that aspect of it. But as for the behind the scenes stuff, no, it's been a long time since I've really been involved in any of that at Ancestry, to be honest.
And I know I'm kind of circling back, but could something be? What could someone do if anyone watching now has had this experience where, right, my family members' their memorial is on Find a Grave, but the person who has it won't transfer it? What could they do?
Yeah, look, ring member services. Our member services team are fantastic. And I actually think that the guys that we use are some of the best in the world. And some people say that sometimes they're you know, they're not so great, or they might not get the response they want. But generally speaking, they're brilliant. So what I would do is, if I found that situation, I would bring the member services and say, hey, I've got this issue with this information being up. And then, you know, they could possibly reach out to that person on their behalf, or at least, if nothing else, they log that. And then if they log another one of those and another one of those, and then suddenly it becomes, oh, okay, we've got an issue here. We need to address it. We need to put something in place to address this. So I know I'd say exactly the same thing to all of those questions that you guys asked, all those wonderful requests that you made. Just by making the request and getting it through to me, and then I can put it through to Ancestry, you might think, oh, you know, I'm not really making a difference. You are making a difference. You know, you guys shape the product. You're the users of the product, and you shape it. And so if you tell us what is wrong with it, we do take that information in and we take it on board. It might not feel that way because you might not get the exact thing that you wanted, but collectively, all the things that you ask for shift and shape the way the product is made. And so with Find a Grave, yeah, do exactly the same thing. If you've got an issue, you're not happy about the fact that material's been made available or how it was made available, let us know. Let us know, and let us see what we can do.
Fair enough. And I will be honest, and I'm not saying you aren't like this, but I'm glad that you're kind of open and willing to, you know, take anything on board, and just, even if it's just passing it on to another team to possibly consider, and, you know, possibly even make it part of Ancestry in the future, update or something, or a future change. It's still good.
Yeah, look, it is. You know, it's a product. It's a product you pay for. If you don't like the way it is, the only way it's going to change is by, you know, you letting us know. So please do.
And I think that's a good note to wrap on. And also, thank you to, and judging by the thing that StreamYard is telling me at the moment, 5 people are watching this currently. So thank you for putting up with me talking and ranting for 90 minutes. I wouldn't worry about you, Brad, but I can be very annoying. So thank you for putting up with me for 90 minutes. So without further ado, I shall end. So thank you so much, Brad. You've been an excellent guest. And
it's been a real pleasure, mate. You know, so wonderful to talk to somebody who is so young and yet so passionate about family history. So thanks for having me on.
And it's great having you on. And thank you everyone for watching. And if any of you watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, or whatever the terminology is. I keep forgetting to say it at the end. I'm a YouTuber, probably going to be podcaster if I turn these into audio form and stick them on Anchor or Spotify or whatever it is. Anyway, see you next week.
Bye.